From Synozur, this is Polaris. I'm Chris McNulty. Every day, we see more demands to take on more projects, learn a new app, watch a new show. The only other constant is time, our scarcest resource. With the business world demanding productivity gains year after year, how can any of us keep up? That's the subject of today's episode, where we'll look at productivity and best practices for boosting it across the workforce. This is Polaris. Welcome to Polaris Pathways. I'm your host, Chris McNulty, head of strategic markets at Synozur. Synozur is an advisory agency focused on transforming business for our clients, navigating the complexities of transformation and strategic planning with ease. As I've mentioned before, we're running a small contest on Polaris. If you like what you hear, please help us spread the word and leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts. This contest will run from now through May 1st, when we'll select one lucky winner to receive a Synozur prize pack with socks, stickers, and a custom jacket. Staff at Synozur is not eligible for this contest, unfortunately. Before we get underway, last month I made a Super Bowl prediction. Kansas City 31, Philadelphia 25. Now, close students of the NFL may point out that the final score was Philadelphia Eagles 40, Kansas City Chiefs 22. Congratulations to the Eagles. I had hoped they would win, but predicted they wouldn't. I was, somewhat happily, incorrect. Today, we're looking at the ongoing drive to boost productivity for individuals and their teams. Our guest is Mark Struczewski, also known as Mr. Productivity. Mark is a productivity expert who helps individuals and organizations improve their efficiency and effectiveness. He'll be here in a minute, but first, let's look at our trends and our data points. According to a study by Rescue Time, the average worker spends less than 3 hours a day on productive tasks. The rest of that time is consumed by digital distractions, social media, emails, and other non-work related activities. A report by Udemy found that 70% of workers feel distracted during work hours, with 16% stating that they are almost always distracted. There's potential for improvement. A recent report by McKinsey & Company highlights that AI adoption has the potential to increase global productivity by up to 1.4% annually. But that's happening against a background of the constant demand for more applications and more tools. And the pressure to do those things can be a distraction in and of itself. That's why the demand for personalized productivity coaching has surged, especially with the shift to omni-work. A survey by the International Coach Federation, ICF, found that 89% of coaching clients reported improved work performance and 70% reported improved time management skills. So let's manage some time. We've covered enough on background. Mark, Mr. Productivity, is on deck. Let's go. So, welcome back to Polaris. Our guest today is an expert in productivity. In fact, he is Mr. Productivity, and he's joining us today from Houston, Texas. Mark, welcome to Polaris. Could you take a minute to introduce yourself, your journey, and a little bit more about you to our audience?
Chris, thank you so much for having me on the show today. I'm known as Mr. Productivity, and my drive in life is to help people to be less overwhelmed with their to-do list, their task, and life in general. So my journey started back in 2005 when I was fired from my corporate job, and I decided, well, do I go back to corporate America or do I go out on my own? And so I decided to go out on my own, and it took me a long time to get to where I am now. I've got a podcast I've been doing for 7.5 years. Also a former radio DJ, which a lot of people don't know about me, but I just love life, and I identify as Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. I'm that annoyingly optimistically happy.
That is just wonderful and refreshing. I was a radio DJ in college. But the one thing I will say, when you're a radio DJ, you don't get the immediate feedback as when you're doing live club work. There's nothing better than playing music that fills the dance floor, and nothing worse than you make a change and everyone leaves. But today, we're really going to focus on bringing people into the core of all of this technology that we've been unpacking and reviewing on Polaris, which can be tremendously beneficial, but also overwhelming for people. So why do you think this has become such an area of focus of late?
I don't want to start blaming technology, but I'm going to start by blaming technology. Because I was born in 1965, and I remember when we didn't have this constant bombardment of dopamine hits. I mean, we didn't have cell phones. There was no internet access. I remember when there wasn't even cable. I mean, that's how far back I go. I think because we have the technology available to us, I think everybody thinks they've got to know what's going on right now, right at this moment. And that's why we have platforms like X, formerly known as Twitter or Instagram, because people don't want to wait. I want to know not only the latest news, I want witness reports. I want, footage. I want reporters. And we live in a world where FOMO is real. We don't want to wait. We want everything. We want it all now. And I know people who cannot watch television without being on their device. Now, to me, I'm like, back in the day when you didn't have it, and I'm talking people my age. I'll be 60 this summer. And I'm like, why do you have to be on Instagram when you're watching television? Well, I'm paying attention. I'm like, but why? They don't understand. You don't have to always be on social media. You don't always have to be watching television. And I think we live in a world now where it's like, I got to know, and I got to know. And I'm like, why? And very few people have even attempted to answer my question.
That's a fascinating point. I may not remember the statistics exactly, but there was a study that the New York Times picked up a few years ago that said 75% of the world believes themselves to be a wonderful multitasker. And when they do research, the number of people who can multitask is about 2%. So I do think people overrate that. I think sometimes about interface clutter. And let's say you watch one of the few things that everyone tends to watch live on television still, which are sports. We've grown so accustomed as the screen has gotten bigger from whatever, 3-inch wide tube they used to have to, 60, 80 inches. As the screen gets bigger, the tendency to fill it with other things. So you've got down and distance, you've got a feed, the Chiron is running over here, and maybe there's an ad, and there's already 5 different things happening on it. And I do think about the cognitive overload that people are challenged with. It's one of the reasons why I love the purity of Microsoft Word and similar applications where I can just compose and focus purely on what I'm writing and saying and have minimal things popping up over on the side. I don't know if that's been your experience, but...
Well, the only sport I watch is European football. We call it soccer in the States. And now I notice these streaming services are saying you can watch 4 matches at once. Why would I want to watch 4 matches at once? I pick one and have it go full screen. But some people, they think they're doing their brains justice by having 4 matches on at the same time. Even if you have 4 matches on your television screen, you cannot possibly pay attention to all of it at once.
Last extraneous sports reference I'll make. There's a program called NFL Red Zone, which plays on Sunday afternoons, and it's similar. It's like, we'll show you every important play across the 8 games that are happening right now. And so every 10 seconds, they zip to something else, And we wonder why ADHD is a problem on the rise in this country. Let's bring it back to the core of productivity. I'm really curious. When your clients find you or you find them, as they initially present it to you, what do they think their problem is that you can help?
Excellent question. People think they're coming to me because they want to be better at time management, or they want to learn how to finally set goals. So they come at me with one idea, but here's the truth. No one has ever hired me because they want to be more productive. They come to me because they are so frazzled, they're so overwhelmed, they're so mentally fatigued by everything going on. And I'm like, okay, you think you have problem A, but your problem is actually problem B. And I have to educate them because they're like, no. I really want to become really good at planning my time. I said, I get that. But That's not your problem. The problem is you're trying to do everything over here, and this 10 pounds doesn't fit in this 5-pound bag. And once I explain it that way, I see the light come on, like, oh, I said, yeah. So let's start at step one, and I work them through a process. But you're 100% right. People think they have one problem when it's actually a different problem.
But I mean, time management is certainly a part of it. What are signals that someone needs a productivity boost that they may not even be aware of?
Well, some of the practical signs, if you're an Apple Watch user, aware like I am, or a Fitbit or something, if it keeps telling you, hey, it's time to get up, you should be standing for 2 to 3 minutes every hour, walking around, even if you're on a long call, it doesn't matter. No excuses. If you are feeling pain, if you sit too long, you could have a butt pain, back pain, shoulder pain, whatever. So these are some physical signs. Some not physical signs are like you start like looking around. You're not even paying attention. You kind of like zoned out because we're all behind these computers today, and we're looking at that green dot right in the front of our computer, and we're trying to maintain eye contact, even though that's not where the faces are. The faces are lower than that. And so people, they get this feeling like, I feel like my life is spinning out of control. And their life is spinning out of control.
Okay, so like let's walk through the beginnings of one of your client engagements. If someone starts working with you, based on your experience, and you've worked with so many folks who have benefited from this, what are some of the first things that you look at as you're trying to understand how best you can help them?
The first thing we talk about is we have a clarity session, because I'm astounded by the number of people who think they have clarity, but halfway through our clarity call, they're like, I don't know what I want anymore. Well, that's half the problem. And so the first step we have to do, because if I don't understand where they are, they say, I want to get to point B. Well, I got to understand where point A is. And what I usually find is they think point A is here, but actually point A is north or south or east or west or some other direction. And so I have to get them clear, because if you are going to go from your house to Walt Disney World, SeaWorld, Key West, whatever, your GPS has to know where you are and where you want to go. Now, everybody thinks they know where they want to go, but if you don't tell the GPS where you are, like if you turn off, like put on airplane mode, your GPS is useless. And so clarity is the first thing I deal with every single client. And this is what makes my job exciting. Everybody's different. So one client could be more clear than another one, but they all need help with clarity. I need help with clarity. Sometimes I get off the train and I get unclear. So I think everybody needs to take time to get clear.
That's interesting. When you think about clarity, the question I want to ask you about is also about prioritization, right? Time is a finite quantity, and the things that I have to pay attention to are a matter of selecting the right things. What's the role of prioritization in clarity?
I teach a 3-step process. Your why feeds your goals, feeds your plan. So if you know what your why is and you have an idea what your goals are, then when you make your plan, you're like, okay, what should I be working on? Getting clarity. What should I be working on that is going to help me achieve my goals so I can achieve my why? Most people skip the why, they skip the goals, they go right to planning, and they wonder why year after year they're in the same spot. There's 3 steps to this process. Now, your why is going to change and your goals are going to change. But before you can start planning, you've got to get really clear on what should you be doing. I believe Pareto's principle is alive and well today. I believe you should spend 80% of your activities working on the goals to achieve your why. That's what I teach my clients. Most people, they're just more concerned about putting stuff on their calendar, which may or may not be moving them toward their goals.
One of the things that I've found that I get great satisfaction out of is when I receive an email in Outlook or a message in Teams, there's ways that I can instantly flag that to go to my to-do list. There was an old Indiana Jones movie where Sean Connery, who's playing Harrison Ford's father, is getting harangued about where's the book? Where's the details? He's like, I wrote it down so I wouldn't have to remember it. Is there a best time of day to look at those tasks and to look at those calendar items? Is it continuous? Is it the beginning? Is it the end? I'm just curious to get your take on that.
I believe it's very personal, but I think most people would benefit from, at the end of every day, to do two things. Review your day. You probably didn't get everything done, which is okay. And then you take what you didn't get done and you look at tomorrow and you go, okay, I didn't get these two things done. Is there any room on tomorrow's calendar? If there isn't, and the stuff that you didn't get done really needs to get done tomorrow, what can you move from tomorrow to another day so you can fit that in? So this doesn't take a lot of time, but you just need to be intentional about it. Instead of just moving from day to day to day, sit back and go, okay, how am I doing? Because I'm Mr. Productivity. I have good days. I have bad days. Everybody does. And you just have to be intentional to review your day. Most people keep planning and planning and planning, but they don't stop and go, oh, wait a minute, I'm not getting all these things done. And wait a minute, this one thing, I keep moving from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday to Thursday. And then you have to think to yourself, does this even need to be done? Maybe I'm moving it over and over and over again. Maybe it doesn't even need to be done. So I think the review and the planning is absolutely critical, but I recommend people do it at the end of your day. Maybe you do it in the morning. Maybe you constantly reevaluate it during the day, but for me personally, at the end of every day is when I do it.
I have a colleague from Microsoft who, there's two things about the way he approaches productivity that I think are also helpful in this area. He journals every night for 5 minutes. He doesn't look at his tasks and go through a to-do list or a project plan. He doesn't explicitly look at his calendar, but he writes down what he did today and what he's going to do tomorrow. Not so much because he goes back and ever rereads it, but it's a cognitive thing. And then he'll sit down first thing in the morning and do that. Because as he likes to say, especially for folks looking to get ahead in their careers, like executive leadership is really calendar leadership, which is an interesting way of looking at it. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about like prioritization of tasks and prioritization of time. The proliferation of technologies means sometimes there are multiple ways of doing things, of communicating with people or capturing information, creating, whether people are working in PowerPoint or Sheets or Word or what have you. Do people know how to leverage the tools that they have, or do people need to discover more tools that they don't know about? What's your take on that?
I will be 60 this June, and I have become more of a print kind of guy. So I have a print journal and a print planner. There's something about writing down in a journal or writing in my planner what I'm doing. It helps me think, doesn't require batteries. There's no internet access. But I think people need to figure out what works for them. A lot of people, from what I see, they want to go to the latest and greatest app. Like right now we have, like, for example, AI. We have ChatGPT. We have DeepSeek. We have Claude. Now we have Grok. And what's happening is, Grok 3 came out. Well, should I leave ChatGPT? I was actually thinking about this morning to go to Grok. I'm like, wait, is there anything wrong with the results I'm getting from ChatGPT? We tend to like, new shiny object. Let me jump over there. That's certainly a better app. Instead of going, is what I'm using now working? Whether that's a calendar app, a drive, a notes app, we tend to like to switch over and over and over again, which means we have a learning curve. We have to transfer everything from one app to another, and it's wasted time. So I just want people to stop and think before you jump on the next gotta have app. Stop and think, is the app you're using for that function, is it serving you? If it is, maybe you should just keep it the way it is and keep on being productive, because I don't think you're being productive every time you keep switching an app every other 6 months or so.
One of the things that we've done some research on especially with the proliferation of AI. There's an ebb and a flow. And you had various productivity apps that came together in office suites. And then we saw a bunch of portals, and they started to converge into these digital workplaces. And over the past couple of years, every major application vendor, whether it's Salesforce or SAP or Google or Microsoft, keep going, they all added chat interfaces, which pull people in all sorts of different directions. And so we've projected there's about 280 billion in productivity that's going to be lost this year just from task switching amongst information workers. Like, is that level of spending 2 minutes in each application in the course of an hour, jumping, is that something that you find that your clients are also being overwhelmed with?
Oh, yeah. Attention residue is real because I'm just going to check this Facebook Messenger. I got a text message. Oh, I got a WhatsApp message. Meanwhile, their task for that hour was to create a newsletter or to create a blog. And every time, this has been proven by numerous studies, when you're working on a task and then you disconnect to go on another task just to check something, when you come back to it, your brain doesn't pick up right where it left off. Now it's going, okay, wait a minute. We were working on this, then we did this. And in the midst of that, inevitably what happens is you get interrupted by another distraction. So you started off with good intentions of working on task A, but you interrupted yourself. And then while you're dealing with that, you get interrupted again and again and again. And it becomes something that is very frustrating because at the end of the hour, your next time block comes along and you're like, oh, I should be working on B. Oh, right. I haven't done A yet because you allowed yourself to get distracted. It is a real big problem.
I'm going to jump out of we're still recording. So Mark, I know you heard the stat that I shared at the top of the podcast about the average worker is spending less than 3 hours a day being productive. And sometimes the rest of that work is talking about work or getting distracted. And I find one of the primary drivers of getting pulled away from those things is meetings. What's some of the guidance that you give to people to run or to participate in a better use of their time during meetings?
Quick story. Before I was known as Mr. Productivity, when I worked for corporate America, I used to be an inventory control manager at an offsite warehouse for a hospital here in Houston. And when we had meetings, I had to get from the warehouse to the hospital complex, park, walk up to the meeting room, and I didn't work at the hospital, so I didn't know where any place was. Then we walk in there, and it's social hour. You got Danish, you got coffee, you got soda, and then 10 minutes into the meeting, we sit down, we review the meeting minutes from the previous meeting. Why? And it was like 30 minutes before we actually started the meeting. And then when it's done, we have a little hobnobbing, and then we go back to our office. And I would lose a half a day for a 1 hour meeting. And so if you're a meeting planner, first of all, you need to harness your Steve Jobs. Only invite the people who need to be there. Right. A lot of people invite the whole department. Well, how about just the leader? And then he could share the information later. Second of all, do not have refreshments. This is not social hour. This is not a networking event. You just have tables and chairs. And if you really want to take the next level and you only need 5 or 10 minutes, no chairs. Everybody stand because people are not going to stand very long. Meetings can be done right and they can be very productive. But the meetings I've gone to, and I haven't been in a corporate setting meeting in a while, but they tend to be really exaggerated and very long, but the actual nuggets are small. Now, some people do meetings very, very well, and you get in, they start on time, and as soon as everything in the agenda is done, they stop. They don't wait until, well, we're done at 10:30. The meeting is scheduled to 11. They stop. Some people feel they got to fill up the whole entire hour. Does anybody have anything else to say? So there are people who get this. There are some meeting planners I know who are really good at running a meeting, and there are some people who just let it run its course, and these are the meetings that are tremendously unproductive.
Over the past 5 years, when you look at the major meeting platforms, Teams, Zoom, Google Meet, etc., they've all added meeting recording features, which to me is fascinating because it's great to say, if I can't make this meeting, I'll listen to it later. That presumes that my tomorrow sometimes is so much freer than my today was. And usually that's not the case for me. Let me ask you a hypothetical. If you're invited to 2 meetings in the same time block, which is, a real problem for folks as they progress in their careers, how do you handle that? Do you go to one meeting and try to catch up on the second offline, or do you go to half of each and use catch-up features in AI? What's your take on those approaches?
Well, I won't tell you what I would do because I tend to be a bull in the china shop. But for the average person, I would look at both meetings. And if you can't make a judgment call of where your information, not the meeting you're going, not the information you may glean from it, but what meeting needs your expertise the most. Because to your point, you can have AI, you could read the transcript. So if you're just going to consume, but the other meeting is like they really need your voice, that's an easy decision. Now, if there's 50-50, maybe you go to your leader, maybe you go to the meeting planner and say, okay, I have 2 meetings at the same time, and I don't want to split my time. So do you think it would be better I attend meeting A or meeting B, and let the leader or the meeting planner make that decision?
I'd love to hear from you about some of your, success stories. We talked about, to start, some of the things you look at. What does success for one of your clients look like? I'd love to hear kind of some of those success stories.
I'm going to give the answer that my accounting teacher from college told me many, many, many years ago. It depends. Everybody, I believe the definition of success, whether we're talking about life, productivity, whatever, is very personal. And I think people, in my professional opinion, people don't spend time thinking about, what does success mean to me? How do I know I had a productive day today? No meetings? 3 meetings? If I got these tasks all done, what does that look like? So I don't like to deal in absolutes because everyone listening to this is going to be completely different. But I want to challenge them. How do you define a productive day? I don't want to tell you as a productivity expert. I want you to think about it, because maybe for you, if I leave the office by 5 and I get home to be with my kids and my spouse, that's a successful day. Maybe it's like you knocked this meeting out of the park. So I really want to challenge people to think about how they determine if a day is successful or not.
So, Mark, I know you're Mr. Productivity, or probably, in terms of your expertise, if I may, Dr. Productivity. What are a couple of things about this subject that, our listeners might not know about the field of productivity today?
One of the things I'm really passionate about is this whole concept of productivity. There are hidden forms of productivity. So, for example, if I tell you, hey, Chris, you should start journaling, and instead of you start journaling, you spend 8 hours looking for the perfect journal on Amazon. That's called procrastination. Happens with apps, happens with everything. So the hidden forms of procrastination. Going along with that, everybody, hear me carefully, everybody procrastinates. What is procrastination? When you don't do what you wanted to do when you wanted to do it, you're procrastinating. If you are a human being, not talking to you AI people listening,
right,
but if you're a human being, there's going to be times when you don't feel like doing stuff. It's just the fact. I mean, the other day, it was around 2 o'clock, my office hours. That's something else I think we should talk about for a minute. My office hours, I work from home, are 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Around 2 o'clock, I lost my mojo. So guess what? I had nothing else scheduled that day with clients or podcast interviews. So I said, I'm going to take the rest of the day off, because it's important to listen to yourself. Now, let me talk real quickly about office hours.
Yeah.
If you go to a job, you have office hours. So if you work from home, like when I walk out of the studio here, I'm in my house. So there's got to be a dividing line when you're working and when you're not, especially if you have family. Now, my wife is at home, but if you have kids, they've got to know when you are working and when you're not. And it's also for you, so you have boundaries. Okay, I'm going to go to working 9 to 4. I'm going to take lunch this hour. We're going to take a break this, whatever. But you got to, people have this in the corporate world, but they don't have it when they're working from home, whether you're a solopreneur or you work for a corporation.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've worked more often than not from home over the past 20 years. And at the start of the pandemic, where there was never like a time to go to the office, I found myself still like getting up in the morning and between, running around the house and taking care of the dogs and sitting down to work, I would still go to Starbucks so that I would have the time that I would have, not as much time, but the time that I spent being in the car, organizing my thoughts, listening to, a news podcast, to have that bulwark between personal and work time. We introduced a feature at Microsoft into Teams. I don't know if you're familiar with virtual commute. It creates a regular scheduled interval at the end of your workday to say, how are you feeling? Check in on your calendar. Would you like to listen to a Headspace meditation exercise for 5 minutes? Regardless of the tech, I do think that having those pauses really affects kind of the way the semi-conscious or subconscious mind works. Human beings are not machines. We can sprint and then we need a rest. Instead of everything being running continuously.
That's why I do not do back-to-back meetings. So I have a podcast interview. I allow at least a 30-minute break. Now, when I say 30-minute break, I don't mean I go watch YouTube or go scroll on Instagram. What I mean is maybe I go journal. Maybe I go do some reading. Maybe I go for a walk. And then I do maybe a client call or a podcast interview or something. So I don't do back-to-back calls. So one call runs over, I'm not stressing because, okay, hang on, I got another call because I got that built-in buffer. I think that's another tip for people who say most people don't think about productivity. Allow yourself to have buffer time. So if you got a call scheduled from 1 to 2, well, don't schedule the next one at 2, maybe 2:15, maybe 2:30, right? Just in case it runs late. You don't have to stress because guess what? Because we're humans, you may have to run to the restroom. And if you're going from call to call to call, your bladder may not be happy. So build in buffers throughout your day.
When you think about, where the world of tech and productivity is going, what's top of mind for you over the next, 1 to 5 years? Just things people should pay attention to.
AI is huge. And I want to admit on your show that when AI first came out, I was terrified. I'm thinking, Skynet's going to wipe us all out. And AI may very well wipe us out. But I'm not an AI expert. But when I began to understand it and embrace it, for example, I use Zoom, and Zoom's got their co-pilot version called Zoom AI. What that allowed me to do is when I'm on a coaching call, I no longer have to take notes because it's taking notes for me. And now I can fully pay attention. And my client could do the same thing. I said, look, you don't worry about taking notes. I'm going to give you a recap when we're all done. And so they can be fully engaged. So AI is a huge productivity tool. I mean, my podcast is on pause right now, but when I do an episode, whether it's a solo episode or a guest, I would just take that transcript, throw it in the AI and say, give me a title, give me a podcast description, write a blog post, write the LinkedIn post. And it would just, here you go, it's done. And so if you look at AI as a tool, like a hammer, a pair of pliers, a screwdriver, I think you're going to be okay. But if you're worried that AI is going to eliminate your job and you're going to be homeless underneath the bridge of your town, that's going to a state of mind which is not going to make you more productive because now you're going to be angry. So AI is here. It's like the internet. Social media is not going away. The internet's not going away unless someone explodes the EMP over the United States. It's going to be here. So you can either fight it or you can say, you know what? How can I use this to help me be more productive, to be more creative?
Yeah, I think that's really important for people to understand what the realities are. You reminded me of, I used to work with someone who believed that, mice, these pointing devices, were stupid. And so he didn't want to build software that admitted they existed. And we're well beyond that, I think, in the world of technology. But yeah, I think denial is not a recipe for success here. Mark, I love to also have my guests share something that's kind of outside of their immediate area of discipline. So could you share with us like something that you've read or seen or heard or experienced lately that's really had some impact on you?
For the longest time, I was a night owl.
Okay.
I went to bed late, got up late. And when I worked for the corporate world, I had to get up early, so I went to bed late, had to get up early. I was not happy. Then I came across a book by Robin Sharma called The 5 a.m. Club. I'm now reading it for the 4th time. I don't mean back-to-back 4 times. I mean, over the last several years, I've read it 4 times. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure people understand this very clearly. There's no magic of getting up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. What time you get up doesn't matter. What time you go to bed doesn't matter. What matters is what you do when you do wake up. And I didn't understand that. I thought, getting up at 5 a.m., that's magic. No, because you get up at 5 o'clock and you scroll on Instagram for an hour and a half, you could have slept in and gave your body more rest. And so for me, I'm a lifelong student. So I think of myself as a productivity student. I never want to get to the place where I can go, I got it all figured out. Because the joy of what I do is I learn something new every day. So if you were to have me on a podcast, we did another recording 30 days from now, 30 days later, and 30 days later, I would have 3 different conversations with you because I will have learned new things and I will have reread other things. I'm like, so my perspective changes. And so I just want to encourage people to have a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset.
I think that's a great way to look at it. Well, Mark, this has been productive for me, and I hope productive for the audience. And I love the discussion you had about, how to set goals and setting a plan to achieve them and the help that you can bring there. We couldn't unpack all of it in the length of this podcast, but I'm sure. What are the best ways that our listeners can get more information from you and be able to engage you to help with their productivity goals?
Well, thank you again for having me on your show.
Oh, sure.
One-stop shopping for everybody, MrProductivity.com, M-I-S-T-E-R, MrProductivity.com. When you go there, you can sign up for my email newsletter. I do a really good job sending emails that really help you. I want to equip you to be more productive. Sometimes I have a challenge on my homepage. Sometimes I'm promoting an ebook I wrote. But if you just go to MrProductivity.com, you can find out everything you want to know about me.
Fantastic. And for those of you listening in the car, we will put a link to that in the show notes so you don't need to go scrambling or hopefully not driving off the edge of the interstate. Anyway, Mark, thank you so much for being our guest here on Polaris. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and best of luck, and thank you.
Thank you.
Up next on Polaris Events. As always, it's a very busy calendar, so let's get into it. Here's what we're watching. M365 Community Conference. This will be May 4th through 9th at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Jeff Teeper and Jared Spataro will be keynoting for Microsoft, along with many other speakers from Microsoft, from Synozur, partners, customers, and more, including me. You can learn more and register at nextgen365events.com. Heading into summer, Synozur will be sponsoring and speaking at TechCon 365 Seattle. This will be at the Seattle Convention Center, June 23rd to 27th, and you can learn more at TechCon365.com. We'll have links to all of that and more in the show notes. You can learn more at Synozur.com/events, and we'll add more events throughout the year. If you have an upcoming event you'd like us to promote on Polaris, please get in touch, and we'd be happy to include it. Well, that's a wrap for another episode. I'd like to thank our guest, Mark Struczewski, Mr. Productivity, for joining us and sharing his insights on productivity. We encourage you to check out our show page to links for everything we talked about today and more. Visit us at polaris.synozur.com. Send us your questions and feedback for the Synozur team. You can reach us via email at polaris@synozur.com. Remember to rate, review, and tell all your friends about the show. Follow us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Polaris is produced with help from Riverside.fm. Our theme song, Alternative Dream, is provided courtesy of Adobe. Additional music and sound provided by Indie Guy Records. Graphic design by Josh Brantley. Thanks for listening. I'm Chris McNulty, and this has been Polaris, a show that charts the course for business and technology transformation from Synozur. Learn more at Synozur.com. See you next time.